Thank you very much, everyone, for coming today. And thank you. I'd like to express my gratitude to the ACMS for giving me the opportunity today to share some aspects of my research with you. So my name is Dr. Raphael Blanchier. I'm an associate professor at Université Clermont, Auvergne in France. My doctoral research and current research also focused on Mongolian dance, and more specifically on a local dance called the Bii Biyelgee. That will be the main subject matter of my lecture today. Bii Biyelgee is a Mongolian dance form originally practiced by Oirat Mongols, ethnic groups descending from the Dzungar dominion over Western Mongolia and Xinjiang. Bii Biyelgee, as such, has undergone uninterrupted transmission from the 18th century onwards. This was acknowledged internationally by its inscription on the list of elements in need of urgent safeguarding of UNESCO's Intangible Cultural Heritage in 2009. Since I started my fieldwork in 2010 for my MA, then PhD, then postdoc research, I have been in a position to witness the state and evolution of, is it better like this? Is it okay? Yeah. Of Bii Biyelgee transmission over the past few years. Transmission is a key element in UNESCO's safeguarding policy. In today's presentation, I will address this issue from the perspective of the anthropology of transmission. Regarding my methodology, I did extensive immersive fieldwork in Western Mongolia, as you may see on the slide, for about 18 months among Bii Biyelgee dancers and other cultural field actors in various districts of Bii Biyelgee and Auvergne and also Zafran provinces. So tonight, first of all, I'll give a brief overview of the main characteristics of Bii Biyelgee and why it is of importance for today's Mongolian cultural policies. Then I will discuss two major complementary aspects of transmission of Bii Biyelgee in contemporary Mongolia, namely vertical transmission, that is, for example, from master to student, or from master to disciple on the one hand, and horizontal transmission, for instance, cross-ethnic peer-to-peer transmission on the other. So, to start with our first part, why is Bii Biyelgee such an important element of Mongolian contemporary national identity? As a solo dance form typically performed under the nomadic yurt during familial festivals called Ner, or to honor a guest, Bii Biyelgee is an epitome of the nomadic way of life. In fact, the preservation of nomadic way of life, together with all its associated artistic expression, was declared part of the national security policy and is inscribed in the Constitution of Democratic Mongolia. So, Bii Biyelgee's inscription in the UNESCO list in 2009 logically takes place in this context, where national identity, nomadic way of life, and cultural diplomacy are tightly bound together. Bii Biyelgee dance movements themselves are closely related to the nomadic way of life. In many dances, one can observe dance gestures mimicking daily life female activities such as washing one's face and hands, brushing and plaiting one's hair, sewing, but also felt making or leather making, the latter being also performed by men. Let me show you, as first example, the video of felt making performed by Max De. So now you see she's mimicking the gestures of preparing the wool for the fate making process, watering it, layering it. And then compressing it. And as a counterpart, men would perform the dance of lassoing, for instance, and also of the three manly games, archery, ankle-bone shooting, and Mongolian wrestling, in addition to horse race. In addition, both male and female performers would do ritual gestures, such as prayer or ritual aspersion, tsatsat. Those ritual gestures would integrate others in a sacredly oriented, spirit-animated landscape or universe. Those mimicking gestures are usually performed during the first part of the dance, which follows a melody with a slow ternary rhythm. Pam, 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 you've heard this kind of rhythm. This slow ternary dance is usually followed by a swift binary dance that evokes the gait of the ambling horse, one of the most archetypal dances of the Bii Biyelgee repertoire. So let's now watch Zarchin Bii Biyelgee dancer Norho performing the three manly games dance and horse riding, the second quick dance. This is from an archive.
Zarchin Bii Biyelgee, Iri Gurvan Nathan, Ignatni Atmi Tat, Hogdangi International Norho.
Shooting is mimicked here. Sorry, it was archery first and then ankle bone shooting. Then the wrestling. And the swift dance of the horse riding. The sound is a little bit desynchronized, but I guess you have an idea of what it looks like, of two periods of Bii Biyelgee, one of the ancient and one more contemporary. So I mentioned earlier that Bii Biyelgee is a dance form typical of the Oirat Mongols. As some of you may know, the Oirat Mongols descend from the remaining populations of the Jungar or Oirat Empire, once powerful empire vanquished in the 19th century by the alliance between the Manchu dynasty of the Jing and the Halkh Prince of Central Mongolia. As such, today's Oirat Mongols, or also called Western Mongols, occupy western provinces such as Khoft, Oufs, or Bii Biyelgee, and they would include a variety of what is inventoried in census, as well as in ethnographic studies, as smaller ethnic groups, or Bakh-Yastin. To them, those Oirat descendants, one must add the Turkic-speaking populations of Tuva and Kazakh, who currently live in Western Mongolia. They also practice a dance form close enough to Bii Biyelgee. So you can see here the mosaic of ethnic subgroups in Western Mongolia, how it is composed of a diversity of ethnic groups. It is generally acknowledged that this ethnic diversity, inherent to the history and geography of the Oirat from the Altai in Western Mongolia, is also reflected in the unity and diversity of the movements, repertoire, themes, and forms of Bii Biyelgee itself. For instance, Khotan possessed specific dance repertoire mimicking the making of barley flour, as well as the spectacular acrobatic duo dance Stride at Biyelgee. Kazakhs would perform dances evoking their own eagle hunting traditions, whereas Togut dances comprise legends about the local hero Aksaj. I'm just quoting a few examples, there are many more. Beyond the content itself, Bii Biyelgee include ornamental dance gestures peculiar to each ethnic subgroup of the Oirats. That is also known as Namtorch, style or differences. Namtorch, or the differences between the ethnic subgroup style, can be seen in the very first movements. So, for instance, in the very first video, you could have seen these movements that were done by the lady. Those are typical of the Khotan ethnic subgroup. Other ethnic subgroups would make different movements prior to the mimicking movements. For instance, the Bayat would do wider movements instead of like this. Durgut would do like this, and so on and so forth. So there are about 8 or 10 different ethnic subgroups. So just to give you a few examples. And if I go a little bit more into the detail of this style aspect, this notion was coined by a choreographer, Mongolian choreographer, and researcher named Nanjid, very famous choreographer in Mongolia, who designed this system to identify different ethnic subgroups. It is at the same time a layer of biomechanical features and an overall quality or manière that characterizes each dance of each of the ethnic subgroups. So at the first level for Nanjid, Namtorch would combine the movements of 5 distinct body parts. The foot positions, be it like this, and so on. So first layer. The squatting posture, sult, so if your feet are widespread, you sit like this, or you sit like this, and so on. So different combination. Third one, shoulder movement, das mörni hutsko. Then hand gestures, and torso and head movements. So the combination of the layers of the body constitutes each independent style. But you can also take one of these levels of analysis and compare different ethnic subgroups. I'm giving you the example of the hand gestures. So, for instance, Orianghe, the ethnic group Orianghe, would use, it's not easy with this, I'm doing my best. Throwing at the hip, Orianghe would be like this, what she calls throwing at the hips. Durgut would be throwing at the waist, like this level. Zarchin would be throwing sideways, like this. Bayat would be wide throwing, like this. And Torgut, what she calls tsatsakh, propelling throwing, which is like this. And all these hand gestures combined with different foot postures, head movements, and so on constitutes the style of the ethnic group, or what Nanjid calls the styles of Namtorch. But the style is also something that characterizes the ethnic group as such. For instance, she states that the ethnic Bii of the Kazakh is danced with 3-4 movements of a recognizable form. The basic style of Kazakh dance is danced with clear, brisk thump of both shoulders alternating, the 2 arms extended, slightly bent at the elbow, and the thumping of the shoulder moving in rhythm. So this is a whole, not just a segmentation of the body parts, but a whole apprehension of the Bii Biyelgee dance style. This directly echoes what anthropologist André Leroy-Gourhan has called style, the expression of the spirit of a people, which has value in its own and impregnates every aspect of the culture of a group as a whole. In the end, what Mongolian dancers used to call manner would, as ethnomusicologist Carol Peck says, serve to reinforce identity in terms of ethnicity. Now, this association of a dance style with an ethnic group, which is completely recognized by UNESCO, is also a key aspect to transmission and safeguarding of Bii Biyelgee, which is my main topic tonight. For instance, the Togut Bii Biyelgee dancer, Tit Sembel, also plays the music that goes with the Bii Biyelgee. And when I ask her what is very important, she says, you must pay attention to not make mistake in the style. Bii Biyelgee dancers always claim that correct performance and correct transmission of Bii Biyelgee means you have to know the styles of each ethnic subgroup, especially your own, and to be able to differentiate Yalgach, the Bii Biyelgee of your own ethnic group, from that of other ethnic groups. For instance, Badam Tsitsik, a beach of the Dzarchin ethnic group, states that her father Banza and father's father Shara, both renowned Bii Biyelgee dancers, were dancing the Dzarchin, so the ethnic group, Bii Biyelgee, with a specific style of thumping the shoulder blades in a specific way. Therefore, she, as their descendant, must perform it the exact same way. And she must also transmit it to her children and disciples, including myself in this case, in the very exact same way. So this is a matter of respect towards the elders and also of transmission towards the future generations. And she would very carefully check from her students and from myself that not only we can perform the Dal Tzochich movements perfectly, but that we can also explain that this is the specificity of Dzarchin ethnic group Bii Biyelgee, and that we can differentiate it from other ethnic groups. So it's not just a matter of reproducing, but also of knowing what you reproduce and how it differentiates itself from other ethnic groups. This also plays a role in distinguishing Bii Biyelgee from staged dance forms that resemble Bii Biyelgee. So it confers a quality of authenticity to Bii Biyelgee as differentiated from staged dance forms. This is extremely important in the eyes of the UNESCO Commission, and they had mentioned that aspect specifically in their decision regarding the intermediary report of 2013, saying be careful not to confuse Bii Biyelgee with its staged derived dance forms. And this is where also the identification of ethnic dance styles play a significant role in the transmission, in the correct transmission of Bii Biyelgee. Because for Bii Biyelgee dancers, what is important is not to mix the styles of each ethnic subgroup. That is an action that a stage choreographer would do, taking movements from here and there, mixing them and creating something new. But if you do this, then you lose the proper transmission of Bii Biyelgee. You create a stage dance form. And if you call it Bii Biyelgee, then for them, it is a lie. It's a khotla Bii Biyelgee. Or it's a stage. If you call it a stage form, a creative form, it's fine. But it's not Bii Biyelgee. And therefore, differentiating properly the ethnic styles is very important into maintaining the authenticity of Bii Biyelgee. And I'm quoting but an example from Chuzumbat, a Togut Bii Biyelgee dancer who learned from his father. And he says, what do the Bii Biyelgee disappear, you think? Why is it so rare? It's because the movement of Bii Biyelgee, as they were done before, have disappeared because of what they call contemporary dance, and it means stage dance in general. Bii Biyelgee has become a dance, a bujik, not Bii Biyelgee anymore. It has become a creative bujik because of the mixing of the ethnic dance styles. So because of the mixing, you cannot differentiate from each ethnic subgroup anymore. Because you cannot differentiate, then you cannot transmit properly Bii Biyelgee. From this testimony and many other similar testimonies, it is very clear that when Bii Biyelgee is considered a dance, a bujik, meaning a staged dance, it is at risk of losing its peculiarities, its specificities. Therefore, you will transmit it, not exactly, but you will transmit it wrongly, which is illustrated by this drawing by the same dancer, which says, if I show well to my next, so sincèrement, if I show well to my next disciple, then it will be properly. But if there is a mistake in the transmission, if you mix the movements with other ethnic dance style, then the transmission is lost. You lose the correct transmission. It becomes mot, from saint transmission to mot transmission. So after this brief overview, and you can ask questions if you want to know more in the end, I come to my second part, more specifically dedicated to transmission as vertical learning. The most common view of transmission that you must, all of you must have in mind is that of a vertical process, passing on something from a person who knows to a person who doesn't know yet. This refers to the usually asymmetrical relationship between teacher and learner, but it can take many different forms according to the cultural and institutional context. In Mongolia, and specifically in the case of Bii Biyelgee, I can distinguish three main kinds of relationship, or vertical relationship. The first one is within the family frame, from ascendant to descendant, from father or mother to daughter or son, but also it can come across generations, from grandparents to grandchildren, in direct lines or possibly in cross lines. So just a few examples of Bii Biyelgee dancers who have received the transmission of Bii Biyelgee in direct lines. So the contemporary Bii Biyelgee dancers are bottom, and upwards are their ancestors from whom they received Bii Biyelgee. Circles are female and triangles are male. And so from this, you can see that there is no gender preference. So it can be transmitted either from male to male, from female to female, but also from male to female and from female to male. It can also go through collateral kins, such as aunt, uncle, or great aunt, great uncle. And same here, no gender preference. So here you see the aunt to the niece, the aunt to the nephew, and the uncle to the nephew again, for instance. So that is within the family tree transmission. Second type of transmission is that within the framework of master-disciple relationship, which is called in Mongolian bakshev khartsa. That can happen between renowned Bii Biyelgee dancers and children, not only from their family, but from the neighborhood, for instance. And it can happen outside the range of institutional teaching. Whether the teaching is subject to monetary payment or not is not what counts. It's not what matters in this very close-up affective relationship. In this relationship, the disciple pays significant respect to the master and might provide help whenever needed. And in return, the master considers the disciple almost as a foster child. The disciple then becomes a bearer of his master's style, tradition, and sometimes even style secrets. So those first two types of relationships within the family and master-disciple have in common that they usually happen in a very informal context, usually under the familial yurt, which gives Bii Biyelgee a very authentic flavor in its transmission. And finally, the third one, the most classical relationship, that of teacher-learner, as in a dance class, for instance. And Bii Biyelgee dancers were also committed to that third mode of relationship. So it's not completely separate, but on the contrary, those modes of relationships are extremely complementary. And I must add that in Mongolia, the formal master teacher-learner relationship is often tinged with a sense of master-disciple kind of relationship. So they overlap constantly. So this is to highlight that Bii Biyelgee can be transmitted both in informal and formal context. The same thing goes with the modes of transmission. Where was I? Yeah, modes of transmission. Modes of transmission in the vertical framework, so within these three kinds of relationship. And the diversity of those modes of transmission contributes to the stability and continuity of transmission of Bii Biyelgee. So the most obvious one is the classical didactic method of transmission, as within a dance class, which includes a very formal, segmented transmission. So, for instance, if I take my own apprenticeship as an example, my Bii Biyelgee master would show me one movement, then I repeat, then show me another movement, then I repeat. So segmenting the movements, then the 2 or 3 movements all together, then I repeat with him, then without him, then with the music, and so on. So adding up layers, progressive transmission, didactic teaching. This corresponds to what Michel Foucault, French philosopher Michel Foucault, has called disciplinary framework, which includes the layering of parameters, the progressive dimension of teaching, the segmenting of elements, so it's not all in one, it's bit by bit, so to speak, and also regular assessment of the student's level before going to the next level. So if you do well the first 3 movements, then you can learn the next ones. But if you don't, then you have to wait. On the opposite side of the modes of transmission stayed something based on an overall apprehension of the practice to learn. Something that Howard Becker has named self-designed curriculum, and anthropologist Aude Michelet, obtrusive participation, in which children, or learner in general, willingly ask to participate in new tasks. In this case, there is no segmenting, no progressivity in the teaching, but the learners are actively catching something as a whole. This would correspond to what some anthropologists have named learning by coming along, which absolutely corresponds to the testimonies that I collected in the field, in which my interlocutors would say, I have not learned, suragwe, or I have learned by watching, harch sursa, or I have learned by following, darach sursa. So they quote the whole of a dance and progressively refine it themselves without following defined disciplinary steps in the didactic process. This is reinforced by the fact that children from Bii Biyelgee dancers' families are expected to perform Bii Biyelgee from a very young age and in a very good manner, without necessarily having followed the didactic steps. And for this, they would take their children to festivals, to competitions, to performances, and just ask them to perform on the stage directly. So the children must have learned by themselves to be able to perform. But actually, they also learn while performing. This is my key point. And even from 3 years old, children are taken to follow their parents, as shown in this example. A family of Bii Biyelgee dancers taking their small children to perform on the stage of a dance festival in 2013. And another example is that of another dancer who took her grandchild, who was not so good in dancing, to make a series of festivals so that he could learn by performing. This is coherent, consistent with testimonies from older Bii Biyelgee dancers who recall learning that way by following their parents to dance festivals in the 70s, in the 80s. So there is a continuity, not only in the gestures themselves, but in the modes of learning from one generation to the contemporary generation. You learn by following your parents or grandparents or uncles and so on. These two aspects, I think, are closely related. You combine, when you learn Bii Biyelgee, you combine both didactic moments and overall learning moments. This is a position I was myself put in when learning Bii Biyelgee, as I learned the first dance in a very didactic, very progressive manner, but the fourth or fifth dance that I learned, I was just, okay, now you perform this dance. And I was, okay, let's try to do something, but I never learned it properly. But it turned out that by going along, by talking about it, by watching it performed, I already knew some of it. So the combination of both modes actually leads to a very efficient kind of transmission. So this would support one of my hypotheses, according to which part of the learning happens outside the didactic mode of teaching, but also when the learner is put, sometimes despite themselves, in a position to perform, and when the performance situation is combined with daily impregnation with the dance itself. This, however, if I go into more theoretical discussion, does not, strictly speaking, reinforces Marcel Maus's very famous hypothesis, according to which bodily learning happens by prestigious imitation and impregnation in daily life. Of course, those are key aspects to the transmission of Bii Biyelgee. But at the same time, I must highlight that whenever they happen, they are always combined with a mixture of other modes of transmission. So it's never one mode of transmission that guarantees the proper transmission, but a combination of them. The fact that children from Bii Biyelgee family, as well as the most treasured disciples of the masters, are encouraged to perform on stage, contributes to create opportunities for self-learning and to induce individual motivation to learn quicker and better. My long-term ethnographic fieldwork shows that strategies to encourage youngsters to dance Bii Biyelgee from a very young age are numerous and are a key aspect to transmission. Those would include various attitudes of inducement or encouragement, encouraging to move in rhythm with the music to very small babies under 1 year old, applause when a child performs properly, or starts to show willingness to dance together with the grown-ups, and so on. Spontaneity, therefore, in self-learning is not so spontaneous. It's also a product of collective endeavor to valorize a child's expected behavior to dance spontaneously. So finally, conclusion for this part, those modes of transmission are not considered opposed and not separated, and those modes of transmission by encouraging are not separated from didactic learning, but they are combined so that they produce a very effective combination of modes of transmission so that children become actors in their own learning, children or disciples in general. So third and final part, transmission, not just as vertical transmission from one who knows to one who doesn't know, but between peers and between different ethnic subgroups. So I insisted on the fact that adequate ethnic styles are key aspects in the transmission, if you remember. So you have to perform the exact style of your ethnic group. But you may also learn Bii Biyelgee dance styles from other ethnic groups once you are a master of Bii Biyelgee dance. And this is not so much a knowledge modes of transmission, but also a very important one to understand the contemporary dynamics of transmission and safeguarding in dance practices. Combining ethnographic, cognitive, and historical methods, cognitive anthropologists, such as Olivier Morin, have highlighted the importance of peer-to-peer learning to understand long-term transmission of practices, values, sense of communities, and ethnic identities, for instance, in a variety of contexts. In the case of Bii Biyelgee, this kind of transmission would happen when a grown Bii Biyelgee dancer would want to learn a Bii Biyelgee style that is different from his own. And this case, unless one can think, is not rare, and it doesn't threaten the adequateness of styles transmission. And I will argue that this is the opposite. By learning the other's style, you will transmit better your own style. So I would like to go through rather long quotation from a Bii Biyelgee dancer from the Khotan ethnic group, who explains how he learns the Bii Biyelgee of different ethnic subgroups, so as to highlight and understand better what the style of his own ethnic group is. So maybe I'll let you go over it either in Mongolian or English, depending on what you prefer. So he says, yes, we perform the Bii Biyelgee of the Khotan, which is our ethnic group, but we also learned from other various masters of Bii Biyelgee, so peer-to-peer learning. And from my fieldwork, I can tell that the opposites is also true, that those Bii Biyelgee dancers he's quoting also learned from him. So he's quoting also the man that we saw in the second video as one of his masters to Dzarchin, Bii Biyelgee. And he also says that he would learn by watching, by following, by performing together. So in the same way that children would learn from their parents by performing together, by going along, by watching. From this testimony, but also from other very similar testimonies, we can learn that it's not only it is common for Bii Biyelgee dancers to learn from other ethnic groups, but it also learned by watching or while dancing together. That implies that the good Bii Biyelgee dancer does not only masters their own ethnic style, but also possesses the ability to learn Bii Biyelgee from a diversity of ethnic group. This is quite different from what one has in mind when thinking of Bii Biyelgee. We think that, okay, this is a master of Khotan Bii Biyelgee, so he would perform only Khotan Bii Biyelgee. But actually, to become a master of Khotan Bii Biyelgee, you also know how to learn other styles. And I must say, this does not necessarily result, as it would in the context of choreography or stage dance, in a mixing of Bii Biyelgee styles. Quite the opposite, actually, because when you learn what are the specificities of the other master's style, then you can also even more differentiate your own style from theirs. This is what Frederick Barth actually called positioning ethnicity. So you incarnate your own ethnic group by differentiating yourself from the other ethnic group, from the neighbors, so to speak. So it also happens, it cannot happen if you learn only your own style. You have to know the differences, so you have to know the other to know the differences. Secondly, Bii Biyelgee dancers. Sorry, I think I missed this slide. It's better for you. So second point, Bii Biyelgee dancers at the same time belong to their own ethnic group, but also belong to a network of cross-ethnic Bii Biyelgee dancers, a network that shows very strong solidarity, very strong cohesion within different ethnic subgroups. So it's not just each ethnic group for themselves. It's all the Bii Biyelgee dancers with all the diversity constituting a stronger group by learning with one another. So it also has a social implication and dimension. And this peer-to-peer solidarity directly resonates with UNESCO's injunctions to value and valorize the practitioner's point of view. And third point, I argue that this peer-to-peer learning across ethnic style boundaries plays a significant role in ensuring that Bii Biyelgee is transmitting also in a lively and creative manner, without jeopardizing its fidelity to the old ways of dancing. Indeed, what some have called cross-fertilization ensures that younger Bii Biyelgee dancers remain equally committed to paying extremely close attention to the exactness of the movements that they learn from their own ethnic group. This is also something that the previous quotation mentioned, that you can distinguish small style differences between masters of the same ethnic groups. So this implies that Bii Biyelgee dancers have this ability to very closely distinguish styles, not only from one ethnic group to another, but also within the same ethnic group from one master to another master. What does that mean? It means that younger Bii Biyelgee dancers who can master this ability, they can create their own way of dancing within the framework of their ethnic groups. So it individualizes the ethnic style while staying in the same ethnic style. This, I think, is an absolutely necessary condition for the safeguarding of Bii Biyelgee, that you do not reproduce mechanically gestures, but you have to be yourself. You have to create your own style within the ethnic group transmission. And this is, I think, not really valued in UNESCO policies, but at the same time, it is expected when the UNESCO documents say that the practices have to be safeguarded and not just preserved, not just reproduced, but safeguarding implies a lively transmission that continues to be creative, in which the newer generations are actively taking on their heritage and making it their own in a contemporary world without losing the differentiation of the ethnic dance styles. And I must say, I have been very lucky to observe this conscious process of identification of styles, not only ethnic but individual, in younger generations that are now completely committed to continue the faithful, the exact transmission of Bii Biyelgee ethnic styles, but at the same time finding their own way and maintaining the practice alive. So a few points to conclude. Bii Biyelgee safeguarding policies, I must say, very much depend on how the Mongolian state, of course, and the UNESCO Commission will consider transmission in the context of its inscription to the Intangible Cultural Heritage List and in the post-inscription context. While acknowledging a variety of points of view, it is also wise to listen to the Bii Biyelgee's dancers' expressed concern about the risk and threat that over-standardization of ethnic styles and of teaching techniques would pose to Bii Biyelgee. So not just standardize and reproduce, but there is something more to it. This is also a concern that is part of UNESCO's explicit policy and understanding of what safeguarding means. Without necessarily drawing very strong binary lines, it is important to acknowledge that successful vitality and transmission of a dance practice such as Bii Biyelgee relies on a combination of modes of transmission, not just on one. That would ideally be informal, not just on didactic teaching, standardized teaching, but on a combination of those. All of which, those modes, all of which are important because they work in synergy with one another. I identified a few here. Probably there are more to identify. And I've also argued that vertical modes of transmission in their diversity need to be thought of together with horizontal ethnic crossing modes of transmission. This also should highlight often underrated yet decisive aspects of safeguarding, such as interethnic solidarity, self-learning, knowledge of styles, and an ability to position oneself as an individual bearer of an intangible cultural heritage within a complex, diverse display of dance practices. Finally, the knowledge and know-how that Bii Biyelgee dancers receive, hold, and transmit, I say, goes far beyond gestural knowledge and ability to move. It implies a range of knowledge elements from cultural, social, bodily, as well as intellectual, but also emotional and relational aspects. Those need to be more strongly understood, perceived, and valorized so as to ensure qualitative, creative, adequate, and durable transmission and safeguarding of this dance that I love so much, the Bii Biyelgee dance. I thank you for your attention, and I'm ready to answer your questions.
How many Bii Biyelgee dancers are there?
Dancers or dances?
Dancers, individual people.
Well, that depends on how you count. The difference between according to the very first list, there were but 20, but 3 years later they counted like 300. So it really depends on what criteria you use to count them. So I would say a few hundreds that are really recognized and have disciples, but excluding the disciples or the younger people who just learned very recently Bii Biyelgee. So really bearers in the UNESCO sense of the term, I would say a few hundreds nowadays, but with descendants, children, disciples learning, some of which are now in the way to become masters themselves.
Une question en français. Quand est-ce que sont pratiquées ces danses? C'est la pleine lune? C'est dans des événements particuliers, des mariages? Ou c'est tous les soirs après le repas? Ou c'est...
So the question is, when are those dances practiced and performed? So mostly in any kind of event that Mongolian people would call a ner, which is a familial celebration. So it can be whenever a guest is visiting, when there is a wedding, when they have free time, when there is a festival for Nadam. So all kinds of celebratory occasions are good to perform Bii Biyelgee. From the very big national festival Nadam to welcoming an honored guest, for instance. So there is no seasonal or ritual dimension in the performance of Bii Biyelgee. It's a very celebratory dance.
Have you seen like a loss of interest within like the culture itself as we go more into like more everyone kind of comes together and or have you seen a loss of interest in continuing that culture?
I would say, what happened? I would say no, especially because the inscription in the list of intangible cultural heritage has fostered very strong state policies into teaching Bii Biyelgee, and also a very strong interest from parents to have their children learn this dance. So actually the inscription has been a vector, a motor to a new development, a revival of the practice itself, although there was a loss of interest in the in the 90s because of the democratic transition, which also was an economic crisis in which people have had not enough energy to think about culture. They had to find something to eat, basically. So during this period, and also perhaps some consequences of the socialist period policies, have created gaps in the continuity of transmission. But they have also created bridges somehow. So it's a yes and no answer. Thank you very much.